Click indicators are perhaps the most maligned and ridiculed trope of modern Geometry Dash, and it's not difficult to imagine why. For everybody besides star grinders, who value quick completions over everything, they've become emblematic of vapid, lowest common denominator pop GD culture, a way to placate the masses, often at the expense of the finer, more deliberate essence of the level. I don't think I need to go over the general consensus of what constitutes bad indicator use, because in nearly all cases it just boils down to the creator not being cognizant, or worse, desiring what indicators actually accomplish. They generally increase click pattern clarity by decreasing mental interactivity and calculation. This trade-off often evokes the feeling that the experience has been cheapened because it's counterintuitive to the reasons most levels are engaging to play. There was no intuition or creativity involved on the player's part, you just did what you were told. I do think that the more artistically inclined side of the community is a bit overly dogmatic in their near-unanimous rejection of indicators, though. Skilled creators can harness the power of the indicator under the right circumstances. There are ways to sidestep the resulting disparity in player engagement, or better yet, lean into it for a more compelling experience. The simplest way to avoid dumbing down the playing experience is, of course, to have indicators attached to gameplay that is already simple and intuitive. I would hesitate to call these true indicators, given that their purpose lies in their aesthetic value rather than clarification, and using them certainly runs the risk of coming across as patronizing if it's not abundantly clear why they're there. Flora by Quid has some indicators that I'd call superfluous, but I quite like these ones in the climactic robot part. Given the music sync and overall grandeur of the part, these indicators are definitely more affirmative than instructive. They remind me of decals on ramps in racing games, something to emphasize the motion more than anything. Another way to use indicators aesthetically is to capitalize on their cultural status. Skywalker 14's Empty Disco is one of my favorite examples of this. It's an eerie, unsettling place devoid of life, which is exemplified by these symbols of thoughtless naivety being the most animate things in the room. It's so subtly infuriating watching these stupid, saccharine little things bob along as though nothing's wrong. It's such a subversive way of provoking the player, as though the level's a predator trying to lure you in by appearing so vacant, so juvenile, so inoffensive. But those are only examples of compensating or loopholing around the actual intent of click indicators. There are instances where a level could genuinely stand to benefit from being less directly engageable. PAX Save As starts with a section whose indicators are like empty discos, symbolic of genericism and mass appeal, just like the airbrushed landscape they inhabit. But as the level degrades in functionality, they appear intermittently in a new role. For one, they make the level beatable, but they also serve to accentuate the player's loss of control. I'm sure almost every GD player has at some point or another beaten apart in some daily level just by clicking on indicators without ever really understanding what they were doing. And to make that hazy, dreary experience the only possible way to survive is haunting, that the only way to cling to some shred of awareness is so cold and impersonal. It's a feeling of hopeless disconnect that the indicators provide here through decreasing interaction, increasing, if only slightly, clarity. It's not a trade-off, it's a win-win. And it's not limited to levels explicitly built around the degradation of mental function. My favorite use of click indicators in the entire game is within Still Life by Empika, a level that is massively underrated and brilliant in every way, but for the purposes of this video I'll focus on the tower interior, where these seemingly basic indicators appear, but for one thing, they don't just glide in lazily from the side of the screen. It requires a lot more focus with a tighter timing window. What I love about these indicators is how they slot into the wider context of the level. This is, of course, the most intense part of the level, and there's a surreal, hypnotic atmosphere with the blurry rotation and repetitive pink-purple flashing. There are no tricks here, you just click when there's a little arrow, and it seems so tantalizingly simple, right? But I promise this level earns its medium demon difficulty. Chalking up the equation to simply clicking on indicators in this case makes for a supremely visceral experience, because the obstacles are purpose-built to induce anxiety and thus mistakes. It's almost an ocular equivalent to pattern seeker in that way. All you have to do is trust yourself to competently execute an excruciatingly straightforward task, and yet the push and pull between logic and panic makes for an amazingly compelling experience. The experience of triumph through simplicity and explicitly having to exclude complex calculation from the mid-attempt thought process is so intriguing to me, even on what's probably my 50th completion. It really is thanks to these simple little arrows. Unfortunately, that's all I've got for this video. I used the examples I did not because I felt they were the best possible representations of good indicator use, but rather because they are literally the only instances where I have enjoyed the presence of click indicators that I can remember throughout my entire time playing this game. Like I said, practically all mainstream indicator use is tedious nonsense. For every example here, I could present 1,000 of indicators dampening my enjoyment of a level, but I do think they have a place, and it's refreshing to know that at least some creators are making the most of them.